Onyeka is helping one man find out more about his grandfather's incredible war story. 10 million servicemen and civilians were captured and sent to detention camps in World War I. Among that number was Paul Toon's grandfather. Now Paul wants to find out how he ended up in a German prisoner of war camp.
My name is Paul Toon, and I'm a Freemason, and I'm currently the worshipful master of the Knighton Lodge. And my grandfather, Elijah Toon, was a soldier in the First World War. He went off to fight in 1914 and came out in 1918. My grandfather died in 1959 when I was 6 years old. I inherited his medals, which I didn't really take much notice of till recent years when I was looking at my family tree, thinking, what did he do? Was he some form of hero of some sort? I understand he was taken prisoner at one stage. I don't know where or when. Sadly, my father died last year, so again, that kind of source of information that I couldn't get anymore. If I can find out the answer to these questions, I'll be actually more thrilled than anything else. And it's all things that I just feel I need to log and make sure that it's passed on to future generations. Because otherwise it'll just die out with me.
Hello, Paul.
How'd you do?
Welcome.
Thank you.
So, you understand that you brought some medals?
Yes, I found these when I was clearing out my father's attic.
So you don't know why your grandfather got these medals?
No.
Or what he did in World War I?
No. He was a soldier, that was it.
These are the war records for Elijah Toon. It has the list of his regiment, Leicestershire Yeomanry, that he was a corporal at that point. And it shows that he was awarded the Victory Medal and the British War Medal. The British War Medal is awarded to every person who entered into the war. And the Victory Medal was awarded to the vast majority of men who served. So they were relatively common. He also received a more uncommon award known as the Meritorious Service Medal, which in Elijah's case was awarded in recognition of devotion to duty and valuable services rendered whilst a prisoner of war or interned. That's a very uncommon award.
Tell me more.
So we need to now find out what he did as a prisoner of war. This is a record of your grandfather's examination, because obviously every prisoner of war was examined on coming back. They wanted to find out if they'd crossed over to the enemy lines, and that's why, you know, they were now free. This account explains how he was taken as a prisoner of war on the 14th of November, 1914, near Ypres. And he was taken in cattle carts to Wittenberg prisoner of war camp. The camp was about 10.5 acres on a plot of ground that was actually designed for a much smaller number of men. There were at least 17,000 soldiers crammed into that small space. It was a desperate place. Many of the men were in rags, their shoes were worn through, and they were forced to wear straw on their feet. There is an account of a doctor who attended one of the prisoners, and he brushed his shoulder to remove some dust. And he found out that it was not dust on his shoulder, but lice. Oh, God. Living lice. Oh. The rations were put in trolleys and just sent forward because the soldiers were dying of typhus. You know, over 185 people, perhaps more, died of typhus. In December 1914, the German military left the camp. So effectively, they'd been left to die. Dogs were brought in to maintain the line that the soldiers did not cross. But your grandfather escaped.
Wow.
Now, Elijah provided an account of his escape. This is what your grandfather says. He explained that because of his experience, he managed to pretend that he was a member of the Royal Army Medical Corps. And he and another man left the camp on December the 28th and were escorted by the German officials because they were convinced they were part of the medical corps. They were able to cross from German lines into the British lines with apparently almost no effort at all. He had his wits about him the whole time.
That's where I must get it from, mate.
And then when he was on the British lines, he wired the British government to let them know where he was. They came back to England on the 6th of January after spending some days in Aldershot where he was examined. And then he proceeded home.
Amazing. Didn't know that
There's a
at all.
lot to take in, I know. So your grandfather was in this terrible, horrific war camp. And not only did your grandfather have immense courage, he had the wherewithal to effect his escape.
Yes.
And effect the escape of another as well.
Yes.
That's an incredible...
It is. It's a great story. It really is.
So what's been passed on to you now is a great legacy.
Yes, definitely. And I can pass it on to my sons and grandson.
Thank you, Paul. It's been a tremendous pleasure. Thank you.
My pleasure as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The story of the prisoner of war camp was just incredible, especially to kind of survive it and escape. And the method of escaping was quite ingenious. It just makes me immensely proud because to have the initiative to help others and actually to escape, to rejoin the war effort. The whole family's like that. We kind of, there's an old adage, lead, follow, or get out of the way. And we've always been leaders. We can't have second best. We just go for it. And it's obviously come probably via my grandfather.
Paul now knows the truth about his grandfather's ingenious escape from the prisoner of war camp and can take real pride knowing how he won those medals. British family numbers seem to be increasing, but we have a long way to go to match 18th century figures where the average number of children was 7. Patricia Hansford wants to find out about an ancestor who seemed to go completely against the norm and just had 1 child.
My name is Patricia Hansford and I originally come from Hull. It was my uncle in Canada. He got me interested in the family tree. He was doing his side. He used to ring my dad, ask him for information, and then me and my dad would trot down to the library, have a look on the microfilm to see what we could find. I found it quite exciting, and I think Dad did too. And it gave us that bond at that time in our lives. My main question would be to find out about William Waltham. What I know of William is he died in 1842. He was a drover, I presume with cattle or sheep. He had 1 son, Walter, and in that period, people didn't stick at 1 child. They all had big families. Did Walter have other siblings? But if he did, what happened to them? I've now hit a brick wall, and I personally can't get any further back with William. I want to do this for my dad. He was the Waltham line for me, and I want to extend it for him. He would have encouraged me to do that.
So, Pat, welcome.
Thank you.
So you're here today to find out about your great-great-great-great-granddad.
Yes.
Right? Now, that's the wonderful William Waltham.
It is.
And this man here is your dad.
It is.
And he got you started on this journey, didn't he?
He did, yes. Yeah.
The William Waltham that we're looking for, we've found a record for him. So this is a marriage record. This is for William Waltham and Jemima Forsdyke. These are your 4 times great-grandparents.
Yes.
And they're getting married in Cambridgeshire in 1824. He was 32 and she was 24. And you said they had a son called Walter.
Yes.
We've located a birth record for Walter Waltham in Spalding. Now, we believe the birth occurred on the 16th of April in 1839. Now, when we think about family history, and we think particularly around this time, we have a tendency to think of big families.
Yeah.
And there's a bunch of reasons why, there wasn't viable contraception. More children often meant more help, particularly if you were an agricultural labourer, you had more children to help with the work that you were doing. So big families had an advantage to some extent. And you also had, huge infant mortality rates.
Yeah.
And so your suspicion was, well, I found 1, there must be others. When we see this record actually dates to 39, but this is 15 years after they're married. You can have a lot of kids in 15 years.
Oh, yeah.
So we need to look to see if there's more children.
Yes.
We don't have civil registration yet. Civil registration happened in 1837, I think it came in.
Yeah.
Prior to that, you have the Parish Act, which required them to register all the baptisms. If you didn't have your children baptised, they don't exist in the records.
Yeah.
So there could be a whole bunch of reasons why you struggle to find any. But take some solace from the fact that we couldn't find any either.
Right.
You know, when we start to think about why couldn't we find any more children, we have to start positing a theory about why was that the case. We've found something that we think supports the economic theory,
Right.
if you like. So this is a newspaper article from 1840. William Waltham, drover, hath by indenture of assignment bearing the date the 30th of November last, assigned and transferred all his personal estate and effects unto Thomas Wadsley and Samuel Pockington. So what we think has happened here is this is a suggestion that perhaps he was having some financial difficulty and transferred his effects to them in order to cover some kind of debt. But what we do know, right, at this point in time, he was living apart from Jemima and he was in financial difficulty. So she was probably doing what she needed to do in order to put food on the table for her and William. And he was doing what he needed to do in order to try and solve the financial difficulties he'd found himself in.
Right. I hadn't thought of them being separated or in that respect, anyway.
When we look on the 1851 census, 10 years later, we still see them living apart. And then we found this record, which is the death record for William Waltham. Jemima, his wife, was present at his death.
Yeah.
This single entry on this document, to me, says that there was something still there between the two of them. She was there when he needed her to be there.
Yeah. Nice to think they weren't separated and hated each other, basically. And it's nice to know that he didn't die alone.
But who was he? How was he seen by others? And one of the things we have to be really careful about when we're doing family history is to measure someone based on one record or two records, which is why we should look far and wide for information about who they were. And so I want to show you something that we found that I think gives us a wonderful insight into who your 4 times great-grandfather, William Waltham, was. It's an obituary.
Right.
His interment took place on Sunday last in the presence of one of the largest assemblages ever collected in Wilton. More than 500 persons passed over a bridge in procession at the entrance of the village, and upon reaching the church, the number was considerably increased.
Wow.
He was clearly a man of some standing in the community.
Yeah. I've never seen that before. To think that he was so well known and represented.
He was clearly well loved by the community.
Yeah.
Just by looking a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right of the sort of traditional approach, we found a lot more of the story of who this man was. And I hope we've given you a bit more insight into your family.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And this is the man who inspired it all, isn't it? This is your dad.
That's my dad, yeah. I can't look at it. Yeah.
How do you think he'd feel to know all this stuff?
He would have been over the moon. He was really interested in it. As to the names, what happened in the family, it's hard even looking at that.
And it's your dad's story just as much as it's your story.
Yeah.
Pat, thank you for coming.
Thank you. That was very good, very interesting. Finding out that when William died, that there was 500 people attended his funeral. Fascinating. I wouldn't have even thought there was 500 people that lived in the area. But to know that and have that knowledge shows he was well respected and gives you a bit more of an insight into the person that he was.
So Patricia leaves today having learnt a lot more about her 4 times great-grandfather, William Waltham. Joining us now is a real-life king, a pearly king, in fact, with a family rumour that dates back to the 1800s. It's all about a long-lost fortune which is tied up in one of London's most famous landmark pubs, the Windmill in Clapham Common.
My name's Gerald Baxter. I'm from Streatham in Lambeth in South London. And my wife's an East Ender. We are the Pearly King and Queen of Streatham. The Pearlies are unique because it started in 1875. And it was a young lad that actually thought, how could he raise money for the local workhouse where he was brought up in and the local hospital? And he thought, if I made a suit covering the buttons, and he attracted so much attention with his collecting tins, that it spread all over London, and families continued with those titles because they were given a title for each borough. I love being a Pearly King because of what it does. I mean, it is a family tradition. I love the history of families, and I've always been interested. And Dad had said to me, the Windmill pub in Clapham Common was owned by an ancestor, and I'm not sure how far back. And he said that there was some problems, mental illness. The owner possibly was taken to an asylum, and the government took the whole lot. It would be lovely to sort of go past it and say, yeah, one of my ancestors owned that, and actually say a little bit more about how they owned it, why they owned it, why they got rid of it. Could we be secret millionaires? I'd probably find out that they were horse thieves that used to visit it or something. But yeah, I'd love to know as much as possible.
Gerald, or Jerry, I'm told I can call my king.
Yes, you may.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Let's find out about the Windmill pub to give us some clues. There was indeed a windmill in the 17th century, the 1600s, an ideal location, of course, and then later on it became an ideal staging post for coaches passing through. Not nearly as la-di-da as it is now, that's for sure. But it would have been a great place to make money, to be honest, if you were a publican. So let's find out what we can. Here we have a family tree, and we're tracking back through the Baxter line. That was the tip-off you gave us, that this was in your paternal line, going up through the Baxters.
That's right.
So here we have our Pearly King, Gerald Baxter. We've got a James Baxter, born in 1848, so we're mid-19th century, if you can see there, your great-grandfather. Yes. Well, we decided to start with your great-great-grandfather, James Baxter.
Yep.
And we identified James Baxter's baptism.
Yes.
You can see there, his father and mother are William and Sarah Augusta. Rather grand.
Oh.
You can see that William, the father of James, who's being baptised, is a shoemaker, not a publican, but no matter. Let's stick with the James and the William pairing and see what becomes of them. Because here we have the census from 1841. So some 20 years later, and I'm going to point out for you a William Baxter, and you can see he's married to Sarah, and he's got a son called James. And you'll remember 20 years earlier, he was just a humble shoemaker, but now he's calling himself a writer.
Oh.
And if you look down, his son James is not getting his hands dirty. He is a clerk, okay? So they're not doing badly as a pair.
No.
Now, 6 years later, James acquires a wife, Sarah Ann. Let's now look at that marriage certificate. Okay, 1847, James Baxter with Sarah Ann Shepherd. But you can see that James, when asked to give his rank or profession, says he's a gentleman. He's above work by this stage, OK? So he's gone from being a clerk to being a gentleman. So things are going rather well. Well, not every story has a happy ending, does it? And sadly, James, who married Sarah, she had 6 children in a 10-year period. She died prematurely, about 10 years after their marriage, approximately. And that had a dire effect on the family. The father, William, also dies. So we see James and his old mother, Sarah Augusta, in charge of 6 children. That situation doesn't last long successfully. Unfortunately, we believe that James and Sarah ended up in workhouses and the 4 youngest children in a poor law school. The Poor Law of 1834, of course, was designed really to solve the problem of unsightly poor on the street. And it was seen as a way of incentivising the poor, so it wasn't just pure charity.
Oh,
you know,
no.
you can come and be given a roof over your head, but you work for it.
Yes.
And this is not the end that Gentleman James would have envisaged, I don't think, when he married 10 years earlier in 1847. And I regret to say there's evidence that both James and Sarah could have died in the workhouse. Is this a shock to you, to find a dead end in a workhouse for a big part of your family tree?
Definitely. I mean, I didn't know anything about that. And it's not the most pleasant of outcomes.
It would have been hell, I imagine.
God.
But I'm afraid we failed to find anyone attached to the Windmill pub in Clapham Common. However, we bore in mind our quest, because you're here today, something must have gone right, and you're still carrying this family story, the Windmill pub in Clapham Common. And we felt maybe we'd missed a trick. So we decided to return to James Baxter before it went horribly wrong and he ended up in the workhouse. You'll remember he got married.
Yes.
Sarah Ann Shepherd, 1847. Now, earlier we looked at his father. We were focused on William Baxter being a gentleman. But if you look below William Baxter, the other father, it's a Thomas Shepherd. And do you see, in the rank or profession of father, he is named as a licensed victualler.
Yes.
And a victualler is?
The pub
The
owner.
person who's licensed to serve alcohol.
Yeah.
So suddenly, we're on track, we feel. The quest is to find out if this Thomas is in some way connected to the Windmill pub in Clapham Common. Now, we could find his children's baptism certificates, and in those, there was confirmation that he was a publican in various different licensed buildings. But it was proving elusive, looking for the Windmill pub, OK? No clear or concrete evidence. And in fact, he proved a bit elusive. We couldn't find him in a couple of censuses. Where had this Thomas Shepherd gone? So we decided to change track. And instead, we looked for his will. Because if you're a publican, you're a man of some means, and therefore you would, it would be assumed, leave or at least write a will. And Thomas didn't let us down, you'll be glad to hear.
Oh,
OK?
right.
And here I can show you, written in October 1829, his will. And I'm going to point to you the word, the Windmill.
Yes.
So he's a leaseholder. Remember, he doesn't own the pub.
Yeah.
He says, I give them the leasehold house now occupied by me, called or known by the sign of the Windmill, and situated in the New Cut Lambeth. You, Mr. Pearly King, have been looking for the wrong pub.
Oh, dear.
And where do you live? What borough?
In Lambeth.
Right. So the pub of your ancestors has been right under your nose. So how do we feel about that, then? Are you pleased that you're actually located in Lambeth?
Well, yes, exactly. That is so good to know. Thank you.
Thank you. It was great fun.
Brilliant. Fantastic news. So it's added credence to the story that we've had, only just with a slight twist. The pub that I am connected with is 3 miles from the pub we thought we were. Clapham Common, well, it's all right, but the Cut's much better.
Another case solved, as we've discovered the fate of Jerry's Victorian ancestors and also confirmed he's connected to the Windmill pub, just not the one he thought. Now to a woman whose grandparents were caught up in a huge exodus of people. Trudy Brandt from Southampton wants to find out what connection they had to India during partition in 1947.
I don't have a great understanding of my heritage. I've always known that I'm of mixed race, but I was only 6 months old when my mum and dad split up, and we lost touch with my dad, Leon Pushon. So I know that my grandparents, Eugene and Emerald Pushon, lived in Lahore, but I don't know where they both came from before that, who their ancestors were.
Welcome, Trudy.
Thank you very much.
Good. So, when you were growing up, what did you think about your own ethnicity?
I always knew that I was mixed race. Right. I was born in '67, so at that time there was still a bit of a stigma about it. People were racist.
Right.
I don't get it so much now, but when I was a girl, there was definitely, you know, some feeling from some people against it.
Were you accepted by Asian people as Asian, and were you accepted by white British people as white British?
I wasn't seen as being either.
And you asked to fill in your ethnicity?
Yeah.
How would you?
White British.
White British.
That's how much it's affected me, I guess, yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about your family?
This is Eugene and Emerald Pushon, my paternal grandparents, who lived in Lahore, which was part of India until partition, and is now part of Pakistan.
So this was part of India that was ruled by the British Empire during the time that the British Empire existed.
Yes.
The Partition of India in August 1947 split the former colony, or British Raj, into two independent states, India and the Dominion of Pakistan. The British plan divided the country along religious lines, with Pakistan being created as a new Islamic state, while Hindus and Sikhs were to remain in India. But the hastily drawn borders were explosive and divisive. There was large-scale violence, destruction and murder as partition ripped communities apart. It created one of the largest refugee crises of modern times, as an estimated 10 million people were displaced along the religious divide.
That's terrible.
And the British government stood back and let it effectively happen.
That's terrible. And it's really not that long ago.
It's not that long ago.
1947.
70 years ago. Your ancestors were in the midst of all of this that was taking place.
I can't imagine how on earth that would feel.
More than 1 million people died. More than 1 million. So we need to go forward a bit and talk more about your family.
Okay.
Now, Eugene, your grandfather, who we mentioned before, was the only doctor in the family. John, your 3 times great-grandfather, and his brother, Alexander, both worked as government clerks in the East India Company civil service.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It was a very powerful company. It was one of those companies set up during the 1600s that began to dominate world trade.
Wow.
It was also one of those companies that spearheaded colonialism in the East India Company that your ancestors worked for.
Yeah.
Were part of that colonial, aggressive economics. And they only wanted people that they could trust.
Oh, and the perception
was that a certain class of person could be trusted. What we may call Anglo-Indian people, which isn't a very nice term, but it's a term that refers to people who have European ancestry, not just English, but European ancestry, but also are mixed with Asian ancestry.
Yeah.
This class of people, such as your ancestors, were trusted during British colonial rule. And they were trusted in the civil service. And that
based upon?
That would be based on religion or language or ethnicity or background?
Not because of skills or talent or qualifications.
There was a belief that the skills and talents were linked to the ethnicity, the religion.
That's not comfortable.
No. But that's the nature of that society. And it's your personal history. Let's go on forward a bit. We've discovered that your ancestor, Alexander Pushon, was married to a woman called Mary de Costa.
Yeah.
Now, we believe that Mary actually had a diverse heritage.
Mm-hmm.
Her last name is Portuguese.
Oh.
The Portuguese came to India, to the western port of Goa.
Yeah.
From the 15th century.
Yeah.
And they began trading from there. And they were trading in everything, including people. The children of those people, those Portuguese people of Portuguese descent, would inherit their Portuguese names, like da Costa. So if we go forward now to what happened in partition, your ancestors, Dr. Eugene and Emerald, when the British left, the privileged class of people lost their positions effectively and had to decide which side they were going to stay with.
It's a case of survival, then.
If they were unable to decide,
Yeah.
then they had to leave India.
Oh. So...
If they didn't fit.
Wow.
I want to show you this other document. It's a shipping record.
Yeah.
Who were leaving at the time of partition.
Okay.
And it shows Dr. Eugene and Emerald sailed from Bombay to London.
That's why, then. That's why, because of partition. So they had to leave everything. So you got to go. Where do you go?
Back to the mother. Britain's the mother. That's what they would have been told. They would have been
caused it all,
exactly,
though?
but they would be told that Britain is your mother country. And especially if you were Anglo-Indian,
Yeah.
your grandparents would be told, look, come to Britain.
Oh. Oh, OK. So that was given to them as
That would be the
a
idea.
viable option.
And they would believe it. So they arrived in Southampton on the 5th of November, 1948. Their last permanent residence was in Pakistan. And at that point, Eugene was employed by the army. Eugene didn't spend long in this country. If we look at these shipping records, so for the 5th of February, 1949, so it's Eugene Pushon, your direct ancestor, who is now 37 years old, outward bound from Southampton to Buenos Aires in South America.
Wow. That's some journey that he's done in a very short space of time.
Almost all the way around the world.
So he left Emerald and Leon here? I mean...
Did he go alone? Eugene remarried a woman named Lucia Rosa.
So yet another terrible effect of partition, then?
Yes.
Yeah, if there were any cracks in the marriage, that may well just have done it.
Yes. So, in a sense, we've tried to sort of provide an analysis of you or your situation, your family.
Yeah.
All of that heritage is your heritage. All of it.
I'm a child of the world. It's pretty cool.
When you first mentioned your ethnicity, when you first filled in your application, can you tell us what you wrote on that regarding your own?
I've always written, whenever there's been any choice of, what ethnicity, I've always put white British.
Yes. So, Trudy, what box are you going to tick now?
No box.
Trudy, I want to thank you for coming and sharing your experience and that of your remarkable ancestors.
Thank you very much. I can't tell you what it means to me. Today, I've found more about the character and the strength of my ancestors, not just names on a page.
You're leaving here with a stronger sense of where you come from, who you are.
Yes.
You are not to be boxed.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled to bits. I really am.
Thank you. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
An emotional journey of discovery for Trudy Brandt. It's been an exciting day in Somerset, solving mysteries and discovering lost family. But it's goodbye for now. Join us again soon when we'll be helping more people discover their place in history.